What's going on, everybody? And welcome to another edition of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Roscoe, and it's one of my favorite times of the year and one of my favorite cards to go to every year as we cover not the late Pick5, but the Pick5 ending in the Indiana Derby. Welcome, everyone. Thank you guys all so much for joining the show. I greatly appreciate it. If you guys enjoy the episode, please go down below the video player and hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate it because not only does it show us you guys are enjoying the content, but it also pushes these podcasts and the other ones on here on this channel out into the YouTube algorithm to hopefully bring like-minded horse players to the HHH Racing Podcast. Of course, for that, we thank you. See scrolling at the bottom of the screen right now, you'll see our normal podcast schedule for the entire week. Every intermittent Monday, we have Horsin around that's usually used for recap shows and other, betting strategies, that type of stuff. But again, it's intermittent Mondays, so not every Monday. Every single Tuesday, though, at 9:30 p.m. Eastern with Pacific Horseplayers. Noah, Ryan, and Jackson just covered a card last night. So after this podcast, please go head on over there to watch Pacific Horseplayers. Of course, every single Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern right here with Bettin N Boozin. And every single Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern as well with Picks and Ponies, Howard, Pete, and Paul, of course, covering Saratoga Saturday as Pacific Horseplayers covered Saratoga Friday. But again, all this Saratoga business, why not we cover another small track as we covered Penn National last week. And again, I've been to this Indiana Derby card the last 2 years. Again, I will be there. I will be there again at Horseshoe again for this card. Both Friday and Saturday, I will be there. And again, it's one of my favorite cards to go to on the entire year. And with a little bit of an extra added bonus as we head out there to Shelbyville, Indiana. I'll say it one more time as we go through the show. But if you guys are going, please feel free to shoot me a DM. You can see my Twitter right there, or X at AP Roscoe K. Please feel free to send me a DM. Would love to meet up with you guys. Maybe even do a little booze and have a little beverage with you guys. Again, love to meet every single one of you if you guys are going to be out there. But again, guys, all stakes late pick 5, races 8 through 12 on Saturday. It's actually a very fantastic card and a really, really fun betting card, as well as I'm sure you'll see throughout our picks. We're quite a bit different in a lot of these races, which of course makes for great conversation. Going to the chat real quick, and then we'll move right into the racing. But of course, first, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. You can listen to not only every single episode here on YouTube, you can also listen to it in audio form. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. Please go rate, review, and subscribe over there. We have TikTok and Instagram at Bettin N Boozin Podcast. I will be doing a bunch of stuff from out at Indiana this weekend, so please follow me over there if you guys are interested. Again, at Bettin N Boozin Podcast on both TikTok and Instagram. The new Saratoga and Del Mar Power Picks are now available, guys. If you guys didn't watch last week's podcast, the Del Mar and Saratoga Power Picks are available on our website, hhhracingpodcast.com. You can buy one, or you can get a discount by buying both of them. The deadlines are on the screen right now. Saratoga's is July 17th, and Del Mar's is July 24th, and you get price plays, spot plays, pick 5 grids every single weekend racing day of the meet, guys. If they pay for themselves, as unbiased as I can say this, the information you get from these power picks is truly worth the money you will spend. So please go to hhhracingpodcast.com if you are interested. Again, under power picks tip sheet, there's a drop down menu. You can click Saratoga or Del Mar. Payment information, exactly what you get. There's even a preview edition, if you will, down below. So please go again to hhhracingpodcast.com if that interests you. But also we have our normal power picks, guys, $21.60 a month for every single Saturday. You get price plays, spot plays, pick 5 grids, not only Saratoga, let's say, but this week might be Indiana, stuff like that. So please go to patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. It's only $5 a weekend, and you get all that information enclosed as well. We've been doing this since February of 2021, and we're still truly over the positive mark. Again, they pay for themselves. Guys, let's move right into the handicapping here as I bring on my co-host. Unfortunately, as I posted all over X and stuff like that, Brian Aragoni had to drop out at the last second. He came in, he said he was coming into Indiana. So he's actually at Horseshoe Indianapolis, and he had something to do with corporate. So unfortunately, he will not be here. I know a bunch of you were looking forward to having Brian Aragoni, who of course is the track handicapper at Horseshoe Indianapolis. But of course, he sends his regards and good luck to everybody coming. And hopefully I'll do some stuff maybe with Brian this weekend on TikTok and Instagram. But guys, let's bring on my co-host for the night, which of course is the same co-host as normal. We'll get to the chat and we will move from the East Coast of New Jersey, Patrick Kunsel, and of course from Chicago, the Ohio State University, Charlie Freeman. Gentlemen, I know it's not Saratoga, but it's a pretty damn good card nonetheless.
Yeah, no, this is we got lucky covering this one. As much as I'd love to cover Saratoga, Charlie, this will do pretty well too.
Yeah, no, this is definitely not your typical smaller, under-the-radar track kind of card. We've got, certainly we have some of those races where it makes it a little more wide open, but we got some decent-sized fields. We got some big-name horses showing up. Obviously, when we get to the feature race, there's one in particular that I'll be keying in on. No, this is going to be a fun day. I think Kyle buys side from a horse that he obviously has personal interest in. I think he'd agree. This is genuinely a really nice card.
No, it really is. And there's a ton of betting opportunities, not to mention the 3 stakes races on this card that we will not be talking about on this show, with race 5, 6, and 7. So 8 stakes races in total for the day, guys. Big fields. The Indiana Derby is a really good field of 9, now 8, as Chunk of Gold has been scratched per Ethan West on X, and I believe a bunch of DRF correspondents also picked it up as well. So, of course, sad for all the Chunk of Gold fans out there. However, we move, and it's still a very nice field of 8 with a bunch of returning Kentucky Derby horses. Katie, of course, was here bright and early. Nathan Woodward, a man I spent a lot of time with last year at Horseshoe Indianapolis. Let's go, my friend. Hopefully we can cash some tickets. The boss man says, "Who's your time?" Who's your time is exactly right. Terry Frank is here. Matt Miller is here. Wiz, my friend, thanks so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. John Fort Wendell, thanks so much for joining the show. Aloha from the beautiful state of Indiana. Again, John, we'll be there this weekend. Excited for that. And Jimmy Johnson says, not sure if this will hold, but favorites have dominated the meet, and Pick5 payouts have been poor, some less than $100. Definitely something to keep in mind. But again, there's a bunch of different races in here that are very, very competitive. At least it looks like that on paper. And Nathan Woodward says he's going to buy me a beer. That's a bonus. We'll see who beats each other to the bar first, Nathan. I might have to buy you one in time. Greg Boyd, my friend, I've seen him the last 2 years at Indiana. We'll see you Saturday. Always nice to catch up again with people that I've met before. And Wiz says, highly recommend Horseshoe Indy. Was there twice in 2022 to watch a West Point horse I was involved in. It's honestly a very nice track. I have nothing bad to say at all from my last 2 visits. Again, very excited to be there for 2 days now this year. I usually just go for the Saturday, but they're running on July 4th, which allows me to, that we all have that day off from work. So I'll get to drive out there and see 2 days of racing. And Charlie, I'm sure you can see that in there, but Ponies on Demand, Big Truz, baby. And I'm sure there will be a man on the bottom of the screen that will have something to say about that horse in particular. Ponies on Demand, thanks so much for joining the show. We greatly appreciate it. Guys, let's get right into it here. And again, the first race we're talking about is the JB Smith. What am I doing? JB Schuster. I almost want to say Juju Smith Schuster. You catch that? Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to do. Whatever. We'll crack a can of the nectar of the gods, and we will.
Look what I got tonight, pal.
On what you got, baby? Oh, dude, I wish I had. I don't have any Yingies left anymore, dude. I really wish I had the Yingies still, but just gonna have to go down to Chicago. Maybe I'll buy some in Indiana. Who knows? Maybe they'll have it at the track. The Jonathan B. Schuster Memorial Stakes. Completely sorry that I just absolutely butchered his name entirely while saying someone completely random that does not have anything to do with horse racing. But $100,000 is the purse. This is a mile and the 16th on the turf, and as I put up on the screen right now, you can see both the morning lines and the full field there. A field of 9. This is one of those races. This race and the next race, there's a lot of cross entries in it, so that's something we're going to have to keep in mind, guys. Field of 9 as of right now. Morning line favorite is the number 7, Higgins Boat. Declan Cannon for Tom Amos at 5-2. Second choice, the number 9, Encino. Luan Machado, Brad Cox. Third choice, the number 8, Runaway Storm. Alex Ashard for Ethan West at 5-1. And of course, you can see for all our partners in there, the number 4, Shards draws into this field as they're going to try him at a mile and a 16th right now. He's a price of 8-1. We'll do a bunch of talking about him as well. But Pat, I'm going to put our picks on the screen now. Charlie and I are both going with the number 7, Higgins Boat, and actually don't have the number 8, Runaway Storm, anywhere, who you have on top. So you get the beauty of telling us why we're going to be wrong. You're going to be right on with the number 8 in this race, Runaway Storm.
Yeah, I looked at the last race. Obviously, Kyle, you paid attention to that race pretty heavily with Vote No. And I just thought the way, Runaway Storm got out of the gate was just an awkward start. And then sat on the rail and sat a decent trip, but stood no chance in the stretch after getting, pretty much cut off and checked hard. Not saying the horse was going to win. I can't say that. But a chart definitely did not give this horse the greatest of rides. So, then we get back to the race, and that's off a year layoff. And this horse was running mid-90s buyers, and running well. Did lose to Money Supply, who, obviously came from the clouds to win that race. But listen, I don't know. I just think the form that this horse was in, to giving this horse another start, I'm going to give this horse another chance in here, guys. I understand why you might have some negative vibes about him, but I don't know. I think class might prevail.
Which is definitely part of the case, Charlie. Where has this horse been? I mean, he ran a lot at 3, then ran once at 4 on this card last year, runs a really good race, just gets nabbed at the line by Money Supply, then has a full year layoff, I'm assuming, to get a race in for this race again. It's just a matter of, I don't know where this horse has been. There's gaps in the works. And frankly, I think there's a lot of speed in this race that might just have something to say with Runaway Storm here.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, look, I completely see where Patrick's coming from. There's obviously some big numbers that I would say honestly lay over this field, and there's some big names that Runaway Storm has run against that make this horse look like one that could be the one to beat. But like you pointed out, Kyle, there's concerns about where the horse has been. There's just been some weird layoffs. None of the works really get me all that excited to fully trust how back he'll be. He also is 5 now. And honestly, I'm just worried also in part with these concerns I already have that people are going to see these big numbers in the back form and end up overbetting this horse. And for me, I feel very strong about the 7, and I'd rather look for some horses that I could get prices with underneath, because to me, and we'll get to best bets later, but I feel pretty strong about Higgins Boat. And I'll move into that one, Kyle, since we both have this one on top. I think he's honestly been in terrific form. I get last time out, obviously, was right on the lead, pressing very hard, but they set some insane fractions, to go 45-4 and, just over a minute 9 for a mile and 8. Those are some pretty difficult fractions to stay on. So I think staying on as long as he did makes me feel good about him. You look in his past in the distance, hasn't been a problem. Also gets a cutback to what I think is honestly his best distance. I remembered watching him, towards the end of 2024 when he was at Fairgrounds. I remembered watching that race. And he looked really good there. Obviously at Churchill in November, just missed in that race as well. So I like the slight cutback to him. I know obviously it's a little bit of a weird layoff where he hasn't been seen since April. Now we're seeing him, in July. But the work tab looks good. I think he'll sit a nice trip. And also, I mean, he's faced some nice horses in the past, trying to be unbiased, but Liganos, Taking Candy, the two of them ran really nice. Event Detail's a nice horse. I like a lot about Higgins Boat here.
You hit the nail on the head, man. Everything that I like about this horse you hit on is my number one factor in this race is the cutback from mile and 8 to a mile and 16th. I think this horse is well and truly a mile and a 16th horse. You can see in his last 3 efforts at a mile and an 8th. He just really hasn't had that kick coming down the stretch. He's up by a length down by the 16th pole, then loses by a length to a very nice Cherie runner and Taking Candy. Then in the MC at Fairgrounds going a mile and 8th, he's right there ranging up and then just does not have it the last 16th. I think Higgins Boat is right where he wants to be right now. And again, maybe against some little bit inferior competition to what he's been facing. I really also like Higgins Boat in this race as well. And as you'll see by my best bets later, this one could be one that I really, really trust come Saturday. But again, there's a bunch of other ones underneath, guys. I'll leave the obvious horse for last in here, but all of us have him in there. The number 3, Charlie, I wanted you to talk about before we move into Encino, who I have in third. Money Supply, who's also cross-entered into the dirt race, which is the next one we're going to talk about. He's one really interesting horse. That's one thing I'll say. He always comes with his run, and Joe Sharp goes between putting him on the turf, putting him on the dirt. It's almost, I mean, hats off to Money Supply. He's a great horse and a very, very cool horse who can run on both. He won this race last year at Indiana. Now he comes back into here. And again, it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up going. However, I have a feeling it might be in the dirt race versus this one. But again, I completely understand why you could have him here somewhere in the money here.
Yeah, I just, like you were saying, I just think he's a really game horse. I mean, you look in his career, and more than half of his starts, by already having run 29 times, he's been in the money. Like you also pointed out, his one try here on the turf and course was this race last year where he got it done. He has some bigger figures there. Personally, obviously, Joe Sharp is an incredible trainer who's having a career year, so I trust whatever he decides to do with this horse. But we'll get to the race that he's also entered in right after this one. I don't think he has a chance in hell in that race. I think Money Supply has a much better chance here. I think this field is more reasonable for him. I think his distance is better for him. I think trying to go 1.70 miles on the dirt in the next race is just too short for him. I think 1.16 miles is the minimum distance he needs with his run style. You look at his race at Churchill back where he ran it again, a really tough field, ran against Major Dude, Brilliant Birdie, Laganos, 3 horses that if they were in this field, you'd be like, what odds would they be? Ran against Laganos and Deterministic at Keelan I get that was on dirt and he got the job done. Ran against Higgins both that we both have on top and taking candy. I just think he's the other one besides the 7 who has that level of competition that sort of differentiates from a lot of these others. And I know he's kind of, almost like a jack of all trades, like where, he's not a master of anything. He can kind of do things on turf and dirt, but he doesn't really excel one, but he does have his best figures on turf. He has efforts that fit. And I think at the very least, he could close up for a price. And if you and I love the 7 at 10 to 1, that's value for underneath.
I agree. And thank you, Elliot. New face I haven't seen before. I was looking for these DRF articles to find out who's going where. Elliot says Money Supply and Encino going to the turf per Marcus Hirsch. So very much appreciate it, Elliot. Again, was looking for those. Didn't find them by the start of the show, but I'm glad that you found it. My light is going absolutely haywire, and I have no idea what's going on here. But either way, I agree. Money Supply has a chance, especially with the fast pace in front of him. Just a matter of can he replicate the same exact race he did last year? Obviously, there's no reason why he can't, and I do agree with you, Charlie. I think he benefits more than a lot of other horses with the extra 16th of a mile. And yeah, Joe Sharp's having an absolute career year. Obviously, just won the Churchill Downs training title. Absolutely awesome to see someone like that, like Joe Sharp, win over a lot of the bigger barns. So congrats to Joe Sharp on that. Encino is the horse that I want to touch on here, guys. And I'm glad he's going to the turf here because I've never been certain that this horse is a dirt horse. All his good efforts have come on the synthetic. Brad Cox has actually been working him on the turf twice at Churchill. Last time out, obviously he went on the dirt, but the 2 times before that, he worked him on the turf. This is coming back to that 1.16 mile range where he won all his big races. He was 4 for 4 at the 1.16 mile. Of course, is going to have to prove that he can run on the turf. But if there's a mainstay on the lead that I would want, it would be Encino, and I think he can at least hang on for a little bit of a piece. Guys, the last horse we're going to talk about here, of course, is Shards. And it's a very interesting spot for him. Obviously, I'll try and talk as unbiasedly as possible as myself and a bunch of other people, part of the podcast, have a piece of him through Crown's Way Racing, of course, with Tony Rollo. Guys, this is a very interesting spot. He's always been better at 6. Tony and Kelsey have always viewed him better at 6 versus 5.5 or 5 on the turf. Obviously, he ran very well at both 5 and 5.5. But ever since he's gotten older, at least from what I've been told, is kind of like down the grapevine, he takes a little bit more to get going. You can watch his last 2 races, and he does not really Doesn't have that one push button run as he has shown in the past, but that Turfway race was so good. He has a bunch more in the tank, and frankly, they want to see if he can run a mile. Can he run a mile? I'm not sure. To be completely honest with everyone, I like this experiment with him, and I think you're going to be able to get paid for taking a chance on him. It's just the matter of, again, can he withstand and can he show his run at a mile? I see you guys both have him in second and third. It's just a matter of, do you guys feel the same way about it? Obviously, I know I have a lot closer connection to him than you guys do, but obviously you guys see a little bit of something to put him in there.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle, I thought exactly what you were thinking. You know, you look at that Turfway race back in what was it, the beginning of March. Obviously, did come from the clouds, but I just thought that this horse just kept coming on with it. And in the last two races, I know that last race at Churchill wasn't so good, but you wanted to be on the lead on that turf course. So I don't know. I'm Kyle. I think this is a good experiment.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with you guys. Obviously, I hope he wins. That would be absolutely fantastic for the program. If I'm probably just going to play him and sit out, maybe I'll play, exactas or something with him underneath, just in case, as you'll end up seeing by my best bets. But we'll see how he runs. We've always been highly optimistic with Shards, and if he can run well, that would just make an absolute cherry on top to what should be a very fun weekend. I'm going 7-4-9. Pat's going 8-4-7. Charlie's going 7-3-4. Guys, let's move on to race number 9, which is the Schaefer Memorial Stakes. It's going 1 mile and 70 yards on the dirt, as Charlie mentioned beforehand, and it draws a full field of 12. Again, I mentioned this is going to be a very good betting card, guys, and you're getting it right away here with a full field of 12 and a morning line favorite for the number 11, Willie D's. Johnny V, Mike Maker at 5-2. Second choice, the number 3, Encino, obviously not going there, so we will move past that. Second choice, the number 6. This is Usker for Edgar Morales and Jordan Blair at 6-1, and your third choice is 8-1 on the morning line. Obviously, a lot of these will drop with Encino out of this race, but Track Phantom is back. Mike Smith, Steve Asmussen at 8-1. Good to see Mike Smith back again, as I know he ran last year. I believe he won with Mystic Lake last year on this card, if I'm not mistaken. But again, great betting race all around, and it's going to pull up our picks right now, and it's shown by our picks. I'm going with the 8 for Chris Block at 10-1. Pat, you're going with the number 4, Warrior Johnny at 10-1. And Charlie, you are going with the chalk, number 11, Willie D's. However, it's for very good reason, as that last race for him was the best of his career, and you're hoping he can improve off of that.
Yeah, and I loved him last time. I believe at Saratoga he opened up as the third choice at like 4 or 5-1, and I was very excited. That was one of, just on my own card, best bets that I was going to play, and then of course the public caught on, and he got hammered down that day. Look, I don't know if you guys picked up on this, but if you look off the layoff and when he switched from Greg Compton, who quite honestly I'm not sure who Greg Compton is, but from them to go into Michael Maker, who obviously is one of the best in the business when it comes to claiming horses, Willie D's just been a different animal. I mean, you look, and the best efforts were low 80s, which really doesn't move anyone. And then as soon as he switches over to Maker and comes back off the layoff, 95, 93, 92, 100. He's only 4. I think Maker's completely revitalized him. You look at his starts, and for a horse who, in 20 starts really didn't show much since then, has come back and run second by a nose, then, ran, I guess, a disappointing third, then second by half a length, and then won by a half a length. Also, I think, honestly, 1 mile and an eighth was kind of stretching him to his absolute limits, but he was able to hold off. I think more at 1 mile or 1 mile and a 16th, or, right in between this mile and 70 yards is more ideal for what this horse wants. I think he's just getting better and better. He's impressive. He's not setting any sort of slow fractions either. Gets Johnny V aboard also, who has seemingly found his form and has been terrific riding. And I'm just not going to get off this combo right now, because I think it's a trainer who's doing great with this horse and a jockey who's been on fire. And I just think Willie D's is going to keep getting better. And I didn't have it as a best bet, but I would even consider, playing this 11 with the 7 we talked about in the first race.
I mean, absolutely. And that would probably be a decent payout somewhere, at least high singles, if not above that, with how, wide open these races are. Pat, obviously you like him. I do as well. I have him second. You have him third. I believe you're keying in probably the same thing I am. I think there's a lot of pace in this race, which again probably is good for Encino to not be in this race. So even though he's out, there's still a bunch of other speed in here with the number 5 track Phantom being there. This is Usker's not slow. Midnight West is both not. They're both very, very fast out of the gate. That's my only problem with Willie D's is, granted, he's probably the speed of the speed. However, if he doesn't have it, his own way or just sitting off like he has his last two, I find it very hard, at least for what he has on paper, to find a trip for him to win in here.
Yeah, I agree with that, Kyle. The other thing too for me was, that last race at Saratoga, you could make the case that track was, very speed favoring that
Correct.
weekend. And also, Classic Catch was in the middle of the track. Listen, the horse ran huge. Willie D's ran huge. Don't get me wrong, but Classic Catch was coming and just was like, I don't know what was going on in the stretch, but just kept, kind of leaning towards the outside rail and just wasn't, coming on with it until the end. So I don't know. This horse obviously is very talented and has been running in great recent form. But I'm going to try for an upset in here, with Warrior Johnny off the pace. And this is kind of put up or shut up. I've had this horse as one of my best bets multiple times, and I don't think I've won once. So everybody can take that for what it's worth. But listen, I think on his best day, this horse is right there and has some races that, with a fast pace, can easily win. And I truly think, Phil Bauer has this horse ready to go. Hopefully can get the right trip in here. I don't know what you guys think, if this horse is just, doesn't have the form or is just not fast enough. But I do think there's a race in him that does compete.
I completely agree with you. I mean, the thing is that he's had it in his back form. It's just a matter of can he put it together now at 6 years old. This is going to be what? I mean, granted, he walked, but that was a 1.5 mile race. Completely draw a line through that one, considering there's already 2 through him in the program there. But Warrior Johnny makes a ton of sense. And I agree. If there's one of the races to catch a bomb, this is one. And I'll tell you what, I'll kind of spoil a little bit. The next one for sure is also one that possibly could catch a bomb as well. So I don't disagree with you at all. I like that you're taking a little bit of a shot with a price. And again, if he reverts back to the Parks form and, the Charlestown Classic form, even though he lost by 7.5, got a 95, runs anywhere in the 90s, he definitely has a chance to compete in this race. And that's exactly what I saw with the number 8 Moonlight. And it makes me very happy. You guys both have him in second. I have him on top. Makes me very happy to see. This is another one that's cross-entered into the last race. I definitely think he's going in here. Based off his last 2 efforts on the dirt. Obviously, Elliot, if you're still in the chat, you can feel free to correct me, but I really do like Moonlight in this race. Those last 2 races, man, have been so good, and one of them was at 2 turns. So I looked at this Churchill race, I'm like, 1 mile, 1 turn, could be, but he's by Tappet on last time that Fairground, or 2 back, the Fairgrounds race, 2 turns, proves everything that I needed. Last time out, he ran against Not This Boy. Not This Boy came back to run 100, coming back in an optional claiming race at Churchill, going that 2 turns distance for Will Collins and Brian Hernandez. Also, Echo again came back to run an 87, granted losing, but lost on Belmont Stakes weekend to General Partner. Absolutely nothing. And then you can look down the line, 85, 91, 86. Definitely a live race he's coming out of, and a 10-1. Well, I don't think you're probably going to get 10-1 based off those last 2 efforts. A lot of people don't know Chris Block and Orlando Mojica. Those guys hit at Hawthorne, and Chris Block has been hitting for 15 years straight in the Chicagoland area. So Moonlight, guys, I'm really glad to see, Charlie, that you and Pat both have him in second.
Yeah, no, I think he's a very talented horse. Obviously, I don't know if you touched on it, that he is cross-entered. But I think it's been very impressive. Seems to be getting in terrific form. Those last 2 efforts really have certainly stood out. And I think another thing, Kyle, that I just like because I know you and I are a little biased towards our, Chris Block, a local guy that it's hard not to root for. But I just think he does a very good job at spotting his horses. You don't typically see him in these kinds of, bigger races unless he truly thinks his horse has a chance. He's not the kind of guy to just throw his horse in to get slaughtered by any means. And I think even if you look earlier in the career of Moonlight, to see, that this was a horse who, Todd Pletcher had big aspirations for back in the day, where he was, running against our boy Sierra Leone and Dornock amongst others. So obviously, Chris Block had to rebuild this horse back up to get to this point. But this is a horse that has always seemingly been destined to have a successful career and running these bigger kinds of races. And I don't know if you will or won't get 10-1, but to be honest with you, even though obviously I have this 11 on top, I would love to be finding ways to mix in Moonlight and Exactas and also horizontals, because if I get, I'd say anything over 7-1 or above, it'll be hard for me not to play something on this horse. I just think Chris has done a terrific job with him. I think he makes a ton of sense in this spot, and I think he's tactical. I think based off of the way this race sets up, if they go too fast, I think that he'll be happy to have this one sit further back, and if not, I think he's tactical enough to sit within a few lengths.
I couldn't agree with you more, man. I'm looking very forwardly to Moonlight running on Saturday, definitely at a price as well. And again, Elliot, thank you so much, my friend. Greatly appreciate. He said Moonlight is going to the dirt, what I put up there before, guys. Again, there's a bunch of different horses in this race. This is Usker, who you have in third. Charlie is another one that's going to be towards the front in a race that has a lot of front running speed. Track Phantom, one we didn't even mention beforehand, but I mean, look, he has a ton of races on his PPs that can win. It's just a matter of getting the right trip, and in my opinion, Track Phantom needs the right trip.
He's
in there.
Kyle, not to cut you off, he's the type of horse where he's the one that's going to make this pace be, very fast, right? I would think, just because Asmussen and the connections, their horses more times than not want to go to the lead, and he's the key for me in hoping that I can be able to, bet a price that's going to come from off the pace. I don't know what you guys think of Track Phantom, what you would do with him in this spot, but I think he has to go.
I mean, they tried rating him before, man, and it has gone about as well as you think. So
yeah,
I also feel like with Mike Smith aboard, that kind of also shows to an extent what the thought process is, which is that they're going. I don't know what to make of Track Phantom. I think people are just going to see the name, know it's an expensive Asmussen who, had big Derby aspirations and will get overbet. For me, this is a horse that I've never been on, and I don't plan to get on anytime soon. And I know we had somebody ask about the 6 in the chat, and Kyle, I know you mentioned I have the horse underneath. Look, this is one that is seemingly getting better and better. Was originally running at Oaklawn and only 6 furlongs. Then they tried to stretch out on Tapeta and ran a decent second. It was bet down as well to, less than 4-1. Then obviously went to Keeneland, where it was scratched off the turf and ran against, some other nice horses like Wyco and Georgie W., the guys that went second and third, which I think were the two that were taking the majority of the money. So obviously impressed there. Then, trying to run against Fierceness and Most Wanted Hall of Fame. What would any of those horses be in this field? So I just think the fact that the connections had the confidence to try that kind of race, to only lose by 8.5 lengths to Fierceness is nothing to be ashamed of for a horse, again, of this quality. And then obviously, last time didn't get the job done, but was almost 12-1 and still finished second in a grade 3. So I agree with you, Kyle. Because of the pace scenario, I couldn't put the 6 any higher. But I don't think is that impossible by any means. And certainly, like you said, I think this is a very wide open race.
And that's the only reason why I didn't have him in there, is because of the trip. And obviously, Elliot says big chance. They said he's training great. And if he can work out a trip, Elliot, I completely agree. He's got a big chance. The problem is that if he doesn't get to the front, for me, I just think there's so many other horses that also want the front. That's the only reason I didn't have him in there. But again, good luck to all you guys that own This Is Usker, because, I mean, that would be, again, I love Jordan Blair. That'd be a fantastic story to win on Indiana Derby Day, guys. But we'll keep moving along here as we're 35 minutes in. I'm going 8-11-9 in the Schaefer Memorial. Pat's going 4-8-11. Charlie's going 11-8-6. Guys, moving to the who the hell knows race in this sequence. It is the Ellen's Lucky Star Handicap, going a mile on the turf for registered Indiana bred fillies. Draws a full field of 12 again, guys. Is, like I said, man, this race is so tough, with a morning line favorite 5-2, the number 4 off pitch Bermudez and Rudy Brissett at 5-2. Second choice all the way to the outside, the number 12 Hot Middles. I think it's Hannah Leahy Hannah Leahy, I believe, 9-2, and your third choice is the number 1 all the way to the inside. Fat Chance. Bet Mitch, get rich Merle for Tim Eggleston at 5-1. As I'll bring up our picks for this race right now. And again, guys, you can see by our picks, we are not all over the place, but we're pretty far around there. I'm going with the number 10, Innisfree Lass, at 15-1 on the morning line. Pat's going with the number 1, Fat Chance. And Charlie, you are going with the morning line favorite again, but you are going with the number 4, Off Pitch. And again, if you're just going on turf form alone in this race, that last race obviously has to be taken into account, even though it was at a price of $1,000,000 to 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, Rudy Brissett's a very solid trainer. To be honest with you, this was one of those races, like these are the races you dread, in my opinion. These are the kinds of races where we talk about it like at school, and instead of finding the right answer, you're just trying to cross off all the wrong ones. By no means in a race like this did I want to end up on the favorite. By no means would I take this 4 at 5. So I wouldn't take any horse in this race straight up at less than 5-1, which I don't know if you guys agree or not, but I just think this race is that wide open and there's that little to have confidence in it. Look, this horse came off an angle that some people on our podcast really like, the zero buyer angle. Tried to, go over to the turf after they initially tried to get this one on the turf, and it was, moved on to the dirt, and the horse didn't do a lick of running. It was bet down to 2-1. Goes all the way up to 75-1. And then, yes, got the fractions and set up and wasn't able to hold them off. I get that. But No Sleep to Brooklyn's an okay horse. Obviously, the question is going to be, can this horse actually get it done? How much can we rely on, that one turf effort? Is this one where maybe this is a horse always meant for turf and builds off it? Was it more, just got favorable fractions and couldn't hold off? And, that's why those were the odds. And look, for a horse that was 75-1 to then have to get 5-2 is, certainly far from ideal. And, going from an optional claim into a stakes race. But like you said, Kyle, for me, it ultimately, just came down to at least there's a turf number that I can work with. But I'm glad that you have the 10 on top, Kyle, because that was the horse I was this close to putting on top. I do think this 10 is interested.
And I'm very glad you have him in there as well. Pat, I mean, like I said, there's not too much to say about the 4. He obviously has the best turf number in the field, but another race here, another fast pace, and they have the 4 in 4th. And if he's in 4th, or she's in 4th, excuse me, I'll take a drink for that. If she's in 4th, I don't see how she wins this race unless she can run back to that Miss Indiana where earlier in her career, when she was 2, where she showed the ability to rate that she hasn't shown at 3.
Yeah, I think, Kyle, I'm not sure if that last race is more of nobody really wanted to go to the lead.
Yeah.
But you make a valid point. And I do think there's multiple horses in here that are going to want the lead, and that's why I landed on the one. And in these state bred races, horses, especially the one who will have her 4th start. This will be her 4th start. I do like to know that they're going to be on or near the lead. I know the pace is what it could be, but I just feel more confident knowing that, and that the horse has one on the lead. And actually, she kept on with it. It was sprint distance, is going to have to prove it to me going the route. Numbers aren't too bad for the trainer doing that. But I think the progression's been great. And I don't see why she shouldn't like the rail in here. I don't know the exact statistic, but I did see something that horses on the turf going the routing distance from the 8 hole out, the numbers are not very good. I'm going to look that up just to get a number for you, but I know it's not good because I saw that on an article that I read this morning.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the quickest run up to the first turn by any means, but the point is still well taken. There's just when I tried to look at anything in this race, because how I mentioned it's so wide open, I wanted to go away from the 4 just because last time it's 79-1. Now you're getting her at 5-2. Didn't want anything to do with that horse if I could. So I looked at this one and I really did like the progression. However, there's just no turf breeding at all. Like I couldn't find anything. Sister Desiree, I mean, she won on the turf, I guess, but Bravazzo hasn't had a single turf winner yet in his young stallion career. So, I mean, yeah, turf breeding a little bit. I mean, Howard, there's not a whole lot necessarily. So I don't know. We'll see. 5-1 is definitely a decent price in this race. Probably stays somewhat in the middling and is working very, very well. So I tried to give the one Fat Chance a fat chance, but ended up going with this number 10, in here. Innisfree last, John Haran and Alexander Burgos. Oh, on the 7. Sorry, Howard. That makes a lot more sense because I also saw that, and I was going to get to that in a second. That makes a lot more sense. Innisfree last, Charlie, last race I thought was very good. Not to mention she closed into a 25 and 50 and 2 quarter and half mile respectively. Then they did heat up a little bit, going 113 and 2 to the 3 quarters. However, she really went flying, and even though she only got a 61 for that, that's really all you kind of need to win this race, is somewhere, maybe high 60s. Obviously, if the 4 improves off that, she could win easily with that number. However, there's no one else in this field that's really above that mid 60s.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And at least you have a lot more turf to look, numbers work with. And honestly, the more and more I look at this race, I honestly think I'd lean towards putting this 10 on top. Especially when you say if you just didn't give me morning lines, I know this was a rare occasion where we did have the morning lines blindly. I would not have it anywhere near this big of a difference. I'd much rather 15 to 1 on the 10. Like you said, it's had to close into some slow paces. If you look on paper in this field, there's plenty of horses that are trying different stretch outs that, aren't very good horses, but do have early speed. And I think that could help this 10 a lot. And another thing I think she really is working for is, we talk about this all the time, Kyle, with these races that have some lower level horses, is their true ability to pass. And I think I think it's really hard to argue anyone in this field is better at passing than this 10 horse. So this is one I would absolutely use. And I think this would be a great opportunity in an open race. I think if you get anywhere near double digits on this horse, this is one you have to be using in doubles and horizontals in ways to try to create value in a race that you otherwise probably wouldn't want to touch.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, but I also agree with Howard that this race gives me the heebie-jeebies, and probably wouldn't touch it if I didn't like a horse at 15 to 1. So definitely one at least worth a look if you're playing horizontally in this sequence as the number 10 Innisfree last. Pat, I'm going to go to you because you have the number 12 hot middles in there as well. Then we're going to move on to the 2 featured races on the card. This is one fully in the Indiana bred camp, the homebred camp. However, she's run really, really well. Granted, on the dirt, and she's working very forwardly. Not a whole lot of turf breeding. However, if she just sticks anywhere to her numbers that she's run on dirt, she could really light up the toe board.
Yeah, this is all class here, Kyle, like you said. It's obvious the Connections love these state bred races, as you should. You can win some decent money in these, with these purses. And I think you got to give this horse a chance in this race. I don't know what you guys saw. I mean, I guess she's shown to be able to, come from off the pace. I look, going back into November of 24, she, came from out of it, but couldn't get up in time. And, the fractions were very quick in there. So I guess we're going to see her coming from off the pace, but yeah, I couldn't leave her off. And just one thing, Kyle, the stat that I saw, it was post 9 through 12 on the turf going the routing distance, so 7.5 furlongs or longer. Horses are 2 for 38 at the meet. So that's just, something that debunks, hot middles, I guess. So.
Yeah, well, right. The horse that we're talking about that we have in there. Yeah, that's good to know. Either way, like I said, those last 3 races, I think if she runs anywhere near that on turf, could be good enough to win this race. However, if it's anything to go off the meet, that's definitely a very good stat to bring up, Pat. So greatly appreciated. And then, like I said, there's so many other horses. Howard talked about the 7, Who's Your Promise? Tony Granite's with a Ghost Zapper mare. Howard says there's dam breeding, turf breeding on the dam as well. So definitely one to look forward to. Another very good Chicago trainer for a long time in Tony Granite's. But number 5, Royal Justice, Charlie also has in 3rd. Another one that's going to be towards the front. We're not going to get to talk about it, though, because I want to get moving into the 2 featured races on the card. But Charlie does have number 5, Royal Justice, in 3rd at 10 to 1. Going into the picks for race number 10, I'm going 10, 12, 4. Pat's going 1, 4, 12. And Charlie's going 4, 10, 5. Guys, before I move into the Indiana Oaks and ultimately the Indiana Derby, if you guys aren't subscribed already, please go down below the video player, hit the like button if you're enjoying the podcast, and hit subscribe. If you're watching this as a replay, please go down below into the comment section and comment who's your pick to win the Indiana Derby, because it is a very, very nice race. Of course, we did lose Chunk of Gold. However, it's still a very competitive field of 8. So please go down below the video player in the comments and write in your best bet for the Indiana Derby. But also, again, I will be there on Saturday, guys, at Horseshoe Indiana. Sorry, I'll be there both Friday and Saturday at Horseshoe Indianapolis. So if you guys are going to be there, please DM me on Twitter at APRoscoeK. Would love to meet you guys and would love to have a beverage or two with all of you. So greatly appreciated on that. Guys, let's move into the two features on the day. The first one is the Indiana Oaks, and this is by far the smallest field of the day. It is a field of 6 with 2 very heavy morning line favorites, and that is the number 2. Oh God, you got me, Pat? Do you know how to say that? Is it Clico? How do you say that? Do you know by any chance? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, let's ask Noah if he knows. He's really good at pronouncing names.
Yeah, freaking yeah.
That's Noah can tell us.
Yeah, I'll believe him.
The Keeneland race. Why don't we go to the Keeneland race, hit race replay, and then we can all listen.
I will. I should have done that beforehand, so that's my fault. But the 2 at 8-5 for Edgar Morales and Brendan Walsh, and the number 5 Heavenly Sunset for Luan Machado and Brad Cox are 2 very heavy. Clecote. Okay, that's it. Clecote. I thought Cleco. It's Clecote. So I was the least close. I would probably get a passing grade on that one at least, but those are your 2 very heavy morning line favorites. Both Charlie and Pat are going with Clecote. I am going, however, with the number 5 Heavenly Sunset. Guys, look, they both ran each other last time. I will play the replay in here. Actually, no, I can't because it's Churchill, so fantastic. But either way, Charlie, I'll let you go first. Pat, please feel free anything to add on Clecote.
Yeah, no, Clecote, I remember watching her on debut, and when she ran at Gulfstream, there was a lot of buzz for this horse heading in. This was one that had major expectations, had Tyler G aboard, who I believe is actually either racing again or going to be back soon. Anyway, was hammered down to even money, and then they just went incredibly fast. I mean, to go at the fractions you would typically say are fairly fast for, a turf or dirt sprint, and for that to be at 7 furlongs, which is obviously at the farthest end possible of what you would try to classify as a dirt sprint, was just unrealistic fractions to try to handle, and then obviously just didn't have anything left. Then goes to Keeneland. Obviously, the public weren't fazed by that effort. Comes back. Obviously, the fractions were a little more light, but still fairly reasonable, and just dominated when going away. And then last time out, obviously, second choice against Heavenly Sunset was sitting just off. I felt they honestly both, pushed each other the whole way around. And then we just saw who the better horse was, in my opinion. She was able to go right by. I understand, obviously, Heavenly Sunset stayed on, and obviously the odds kind of show that it's as well for the morning lines here that, it's seen as more of a 2-horse race than this 2 clearly being the horse to beat. And I think that's a very fair way to see this. I think the reality is if you're playing horizontals, you're probably going to have to either, decide to take a stand and play one of them in single or play one of them with some sort of middling price on horizontals. For me, I'm going to trust the 2 here. We'll get to best bets later, but I think she's all the goods, and she's just going to keep getting better. And she seems to be working well, too.
Pat, anything to add on her?
No, it's pretty simple for me, as what Charlie said. I just thought she was better than Heavenly Sunday in that last race, and she should get the same trip. I'm not going to try and I tried to nitpick her race there. There was just nothing really to nitpick there. When you do like this, you do wonder if you could get a better price in a race that was so close. With Heavenly Sunday, and I do think, Kyle, you can tell us why. Heavenly Sunday might be a little bit better. I will say though, Heavenly Sunday.
Sunset. I knew you were going to yell that. Heavenly Sunday was a horse.
How many times did I say Sunday? Nobody questioned me. Come on.
I was waiting for it. I want to see how many times you would say it.
I'm walking too quick, I guess. No, she's ultra talented, and I think the sky's the limit with her. Heavenly Sunset.
Yeah, and time form has a really interesting on that race, guys. Last time out, and they have Heavenly Sunset that far out on time form. I don't know if you're going to get that. However, obviously, I would very much love that. But they actually rated Heavenly Sunset's race a lot higher than Clecote that day. 113 for Clecote on the time form. For Heavenly Sunset, it was 116. Obviously, they went very fast. I believe it was 110 flat to the 3/4. They went very fast. There was no one else in that race who ever really matched with those two. Just a matter of, I like that Heavenly Sunset's drawn outside. Last race, I believe they were drawn right next to each other, if I'm not mistaken. I would love if Machado. It's still also she's also cross-entered. That's the one thing I also wanted to point out was she's cross-entered in Iowa for the Iowa Oaks at Prairie Meadows. So keep an eye on that. If Heavenly Sunset scratches, it all goes through Clecote in this race. However, with horses being pretty good on the front end, and if Luan Machado can be aggressive enough to get her clear, and even though Clecote might come up to her outside, I really think she could just be the goods off that last race. She continues to improve. I understand that it might just happen exactly the same way as it did last time out. I wouldn't even mind having Heavenly Sunset sit off of Clecote. It might just be a term of trip, not necessarily better horse. Although I think at this point in their careers, it could be a toss up on who's going to be, the better horse down the line or even right now. But I am going with Heavenly Sunset in this race. Going to trust Machado to sit a nice trip on her and hopefully don't run themselves into a speed duel like they did last time. Clecote was able to sit off. Really, no one else did any running in there. Then was able to come up to her outside and just go by. But like you guys said, Heavenly Sunset did stay on and ended up getting a better time form than Clecote did. So I thought that was very interesting. So we'll see what happens come post time on Saturday. As I know, with the NHE contest going on, there's going to be massive contest implications. There's really no one else to talk about. Della Rain for Owen Hardy. Mike Smith hops aboard this one. Ran the Gazelle last time against Ballerina Doro. Ballerina Doro didn't do very much running after that. So obviously very interesting to see her in there. Top is a horse that's going to be forwardly placed. Probably wants to be in that type of Clecote spot we saw from the last time. Paired up 79, so maybe she could improve. I have her in third. And we actually all have different horses in third. Goldeneye Magic for Jason DaCosta is also in this race off a very nice one in the Lady Jacqueline, which I believe was on Ohio Derby Day, if I'm not mistaken. And that was at 31-1. Now you're getting 6-1. Just a matter of who is going to come out on top in here. And I think and a lot of us believe, or all of us believe, it's a match race between the number 2 Clecote and the number 5 Heavenly Sunset, who I am going with 5-2-4. Patrick and Charlie both going with Clecote. Pat's 2-5-1 and Charlie's 2-5-6. Guys, let's move into the featured race on the day. It's the Grade 3 Indiana Derby. Field of 8 now, of course, with the scratch of Chunk of Gold. 300,000, mile and a 16th, of course, for only 3-year-olds. Morning line favorite is actually the number 3, Coal Battle, which I actually thought was very interesting once this came out. Second choice is the number 9, Instant Replay. Third choice, the number 7, Big Truz, as I bring up our picks right now. Charlie and I are both going with Big Truz. Pat's going with the number 3, Coal Battle, who I actually don't have anywhere, interestingly enough. Pat, I'm going to let you talk first because I feel like once we go to Big Truz, we might not get a chance to talk for the next 5 minutes. So, Pat, obviously Coal Battle was very well liked early in his career. We love the story around Lonnie Briley having this horse in his barn, and I'm hoping I have a couple points that you'll probably bring up before I will, but what do you like most about Coal Battle in this year's edition of the Indiana Derby?
Yeah, obviously you see the Kentucky Derby race in there, and the horse just honestly did not run very well. Did deal with traffic as most horses do if you don't end up being in the top 3 in the Derby. But I thought the Matt win was an okay race, but they're going to get they got this horse back on track in the mornings. Got some works in him and has been working forwardly in here, and I think he's going to sit that perfect stalking trip, Kyle. Lonnie Briley's just always been, kind of ultra consistent about, what he thinks going into a race. And I did hear him in an interview said, he'll be ready to go in here. And I think Coal Battle obviously is the morning line favorite and is the horse to beat. With the numbers that he's posted. Obviously more can improve in here, but I think Coal Battle's just been consistent. And I do think is tactical enough to find his own trip.
And I saw an article on DRF today that they're looking for respect in this race. It was what the number one thing they wanted was respect out of this race. Yeah. I mean, just that last race, even though it was only 4 horses, granted, he got a really nice number out of it, but he was there. I mean, he really had no excuse to not win that race. I mean, he was right there the whole time. Granted, he could not have been fully cranked for the Matt win. And in the article I read, they were looking for a race in between the Ellis Park Derby and the Matt win. So obviously, Indiana Derby slotted really well and nicely in there, and he should be ready to go in this race. And there you go. And that's unlucky. We're never going to get to hear the 5-minute Charlie speech. Charlie, I was going to say when we brought him up, I did see that one. I saw that one coming. He fits a lot more in that race than this race. Even though I do like him on top, I'll probably like him on top for that race as well. But again, I try to find these things beforehand. Sometimes I just miss them. So obviously, wait, what? 2 hours going to Indiana Derby? Or is he going to Iowa Derby? Wait, what we got going? My bad. He's again running at Indy, so we do get to hear the 5-minute speech, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Big Truz, Charlie, I have him on top as well, even though I said I think he might have fit better in the Iowa race. He is running here, and I still like him a lot because I think he's gone against horses that have been very good in his last 2, and he might get the reprieve he needs here.
Look, I got to be honest. I don't know who's in the Iowa Derby, and I'm sure he destroys that field too, but it doesn't matter who he's running against, Kyle. He's just been waiting for his chance to embarrass these horses, and he's going to do it this Saturday. Big Truz is an unbelievable, talented horse that I was all over on debut. Came back, ran against Patch Adams, ran his heart out, and just lost to a monster. I told Noah a million times that when Big Truz and Patch Adams ran against each other that we saw 2 incredibly legit talented horses, and I had them as my top 2 in the Woody Stevens. And look at what they did. They ran 1st and 3rd. If you watch how that race went, Patch Adams was the best horse that day, fair to him. This is the distance and more setup that he wanted. Matticat Road sort of just went around the track and didn't move, and then Big Truz got screwed with the rail, had to try to close, did not get an easy trip, which I knew he'd have to struggle with on the rail. Rosario, even though I like to hate on him, I think he did just do the best he could, but just didn't get the right setup. Pretty much everybody did a carousel except for Big Truz, who actually was able to make up ground and work around that. I think he'll be more forwardly placed here, obviously, now on the stretch out. I like that he is an outside post. I think he's tactical enough where if they let him get the lead, which would be a giant mistake, he'll wire this field. If they don't, I still think he sits close enough that he'll be able to turn for home. Obviously, the question is going to be, how does he do at this distance? Can he handle this distance? But I've said since I was watching this horse's works before the debut that I think he has big aspirations that this horse is going to be big time, and I really do believe it here. I haven't obviously read any reviews on how his works have been, but just looking at the times, you know, first out of 60, 46-4, first out of 17, 59-1. So he seems to be working lights out. I have all the faith in the world in Brian Lynch to get this horse done here. And look, I know people might have thought maybe I picked Tip Top Thomas because that was a horse that I had actually put a Derby future on, which didn't work out for me at all. But no, I fully trust Big Truz here. And I just think some of these other contenders, I'm just not sold on. I know Chunk of Gold's out now as well, but I fully believe this is Big Truz's time to put a lot of these other horses on a fraud check.
All right, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Either way, I want what Timeform says, Charlie. He's coming from sprint routing, and that's my biggest angle. The fact that I figure he's going to be more forwardly placed. I don't think he's getting the lead over a horse like Tip Top Thomas. However, if he can sit right off on a track that's been very hard to close on with it, I mean, could there be? Howard says there could be a fast pace. I don't disagree with that, but I also don't think Master Controller could be that type of horse to push that early pace. However, if there's a fast early pace, I don't have a problem with Big Truz sitting 3rd or 4th and going past them at the top of the stretch. I don't, because Publisher's not going to be there. Cold Battle
will finish like 5th or 6th. Publisher needs this race to be another lap around the track to get there in time. I don't know what they're doing with him here. I like Publisher, but I don't know what they're doing with him here.
Look, anyway, I completely agree with you with Big Truz that if he does take to this distance, being by a Curlin mare out of Justify, by Justify, out of a Curlin mare by Justify. That was a little gender mismanagement there, I guess. But if he takes what his breeding is, I think Big Truz has a big chance in this race. No pun intended. to win in the Indiana Derby. I went secondly with Instant Replay, and this is a horse that's been bouncing around to all these different 3-year-old races, and he's done them all very, very well. He ran in an optional claiming at Fairgrounds, won that with flying colors, closed from the absolute clouds in the Louisiana Derby when Chunk of Gold and Tistastic both got the jump on him and ended up running very, very well, got a 91. Oaklawn Park comes back, gets a 91 as well, closing up into a cold pace with Flavian Pratt aboard. And then last time out in the Texas Derby, even though he got a better trip, way better than all those horses. And probably just judging by visual from what I've seen previous to him and in that race, probably just doesn't like the slop as much. If the pace heats up as well, this is the horse I want coming out of both him and Publisher, which I have second and third. Those are the two horses I want coming from the back of the pack. However, I do completely understand. And Siggy Mendoza, my friend, I hear you in the chat, my friend, going with Cole Battle. He said Cole Battle ran well last time despite the lack of pace, and he says he likes that he's drawn inside. Can completely hear that and agree with that. So it's just a matter of he looked like he didn't really finish well last time, Siggy. And again, I said this earlier, if he can, they said that they needed a race between the Matt Winn and the Ellis Park Derby. The Indiana Derby slotted well for them, and they said he should be ready. So that's the way I'm seeing Cole Battle. I just don't know if he's exactly as good as others are in this race. However, even though I don't have him in my top 3, I think he can run very, very well. Publisher is a horse I want to talk about. Then I'll let Pat, you can talk about Tip Top Thomas. Then we'll end the show, and then you can obviously add anything you wanted on Instant Replay. Publisher is one of those. He's still a maiden, by the way. For all you that don't know that, there's a ton of people in the chat have already said this. So Publisher is that horse that if the pace heats up completely, he's going to fly. The matter of, I also agree with Howard, is that I don't think he's going to be as far back as people think he will be. If you go back in the form, guys, when he was running, granted, this was at 2 years old, but when he was running at Oaklawn and Churchill, he was right in the middle of the pack. You know, he's running in the Southwest with Sandman, Speed King, in the Rebel, Arkansas Derby, and then obviously the Kentucky Derby. Those horses might just be a little bit above his caliber. Coming back into this spot, I could honestly see him running somewhere, even though it might be towards the back of the pack, might only be 5.5 lengths off between, last to first. And if Publisher's right there, there's no reason why this horse can't close up at least for a piece, if not the win, if he can improve off of that Arkansas Derby. The only and actually he ran that low 90 buyer at Oaklawn Park at the end of his 2-year-old year. So the talent is well and truly there, just a matter of putting it all together. But I think he does need a pace in front of him, which, again, I think he'll get enough to at least close for a piece. Pat, Tip Top Thomas, Instant Replay, anything you want to add before we move on to best bets?
Yeah, I'll talk about Tip Top Thomas a little bit. Obviously he's going to go 2 turns for the first time. But I did think that that race, second off the layoff at Aqueduct, was very, very impressive visually, and just seemed to, come out of that race very well. And now Pletcher's going to throw him in deeper waters. But this was a horse at Saratoga that was a buzz horse. Won on debut, and then obviously that was at the end of the meet, so went into the Champagne and lost to Chancer, who during that stretch was a world beater. I mean, that horse was the favorite in what was it, the Breeders' Cup? Was it the Juvenile?
Yep.
So I think Tip Top Thomas, there's something here. I think he's ultra talented. Kyle, he kind of falls in that situation of what about the pace?
Yeah, and I had him in there for the longest time because this is the most logical step, right? From what he ran last time. He ran absolutely lights out at a mile. Now Todd puts him in a race like this to see if he can run that extra 16th a mile and that extra turn. I think he's extremely talented, but the pace scenario is just something I don't know if he, like I said, I don't know if he wants the 2 turn, and Howard's taking my thunder in the chat, I just realized, but I don't know if he wants the 2 turns yet. And I don't know about the pace scenario. And with those two things, especially with a horse trying stakes company for the first time, I think you will get paid to find out if you do like Tip Top Thomas. However, I'm willing to look elsewhere at horses that are probably going to be very similar in that odds range. But again, there's a ton of horses to like in this version of the Indiana Derby. And as much as I love, going to Horseshoe and doing this day every single year, the last couple races have been a little bit lackluster in terms of, 3-year-old talent. I think this race is very, very good. And it's a pretty salty field of now 8. And even though they're probably not the tip top of the 3-year-olds in this year, you're not going to see them at this Indiana Derby. I feel like this is a very interesting race and a very interesting rendition of the Indiana Derby. I'm going 7-9-1. Pat's going 3-9-6, and Charlie's going 7-3-6 for the 2025 rendition of the Indiana Derby. Going to our best bets for the entire day. Pat, going with you first. Already talked about a little bit of yours, but you're going with a win on the number 4, Warrior Johnny at 10-1 in race number 9, and a race 11, singling Cohost, and going with 3-9 in the Indiana Derby, that being Coal Battle and Instant Replay.
Yeah, divorce papers will be filed with Warrior Johnny if he doesn't run his race that I think he can. From off the pace in what should be a very heated pace. And then I'm going to go with a little bit of a chalky double with the 2 Cohost in the Oaks. I do think she's sort of my lock. And then, I'm going to take the 2 logicals with the 3 Coal Battle and Instant Replay. And yeah, this is a fun sequence, guys. I'm glad we got to cover this one. Katie seems to always say, I feel like, and I'll take it that I win best bets. And Matt points out that she says it very early. Yeah, she does, because I'm usually the first one to go. But you guys,
that's always the winner. I mean, what are you going to do? There's something, you win some, you lose some, and you move on. What are you going to do? Charlie, best bets, race number 8. You already talked about how much you like number 7 in race 8, Higgins Boat, and a race 11. You're going semi with the chalky double. However, you're going Cohost into Big Truz.
Yeah, look, hopefully not too many people end up picking up on, my little rant I gave on Big Truz and end up getting the source hammered down where that double doesn't pay well enough. But
everyone listens to you, Charlie. So yeah, we might suffer from that.
We talked about Higgins Boat though. I know you'll get into that horse as well, but I'm very high on Higgins Boat. I like this return spot for him a lot. I like the cut back to a mile and a 16th. And then I'm going to push back a little bit. I'm not going to talk about the 2 because Pat already did, but with Big Truz, I don't know if I agree with everybody on some of the people in the chat in this pace scenario thinking this race heats up. I don't really see that at all. Instant Replay is going to be coming from off the pace. Brother Kenny is going to be coming from off the pace. Not that he's really much of a factor. Big Truz will obviously be forward, but in his first 2 starts, all 3 of his starts, he's been able to sit off if he needs to. Obviously, Tip Top Thomas goes. Coal Battle's always been more of a stalking type, and I think at this shorter distance certainly will be. And I'm not worried on Master Controller. He's going to end up being 40-1, and he'll be fun to watch for the quarter. And then when he starts fading in the backstretch.
Whoa, that's Brittany Vandenberg, Chris Amy.
Chris Amy's my boy. I love him, but I'm just being realistic here. And Publisher might be a little more forward, but I just don't think he gets there. I think it works out really nice for Big Truz. It's why I have 3 horses that are, towards the front in my top 3 here, but I'm going to look to create some value here, and Big Truz is going to sort of make my weekend. And yeah, shout out Noah, the guy who's been scorchingly cold lately, trying to tell me what I should do.
Oh, geez.
Oh, there we go.
That was me, but at least he can hit Big Truz to get back on the board.
Bang, bang, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, guys, good luck with your best bets. I went as simple as can be, guys. I'm going basically the exact same best bets, just we're all very similar best bets wise. Trying to use somewhat of the Indiana Oaks into the Indiana Derby and talking about it where, we have 2 very low price horses. All of us are trying to use one or the other. You guys both like Cohost. I like Heavenly Sunset. So in race number 9, I'm going with the win on the number 8. Moonlight should be high single-digit odds come post time for Chris Block and Mojica. And if he can improve off those last 2, I really think Moonlight's got a big chance to win at a decent price in a wide open race. And in race number 11, Heavenly Sunset singling in the Indiana Oaks and going with 7-9 in the Indiana Derby. Of course, being Big Truz and Instant Replay. We've talked at least 10 minutes about Big Truz and at least 6 minutes about Instant Replay. So I'll save you guys with the board there. But guys, I appreciate everyone joining in. We've had a fantastic viewership the whole way through. It's one of my favorite cards to cover every year. And of course, unfortunately, we did lose Brian Aragoni on a last second. He had to go do something for Horseshoe. And we miss him. We wish we would have had him on the show. However, Hopefully I'll get to see him on Saturday, and he does a ton of good information on race day. His Twitter handle, his X handle is at Mr. B Analyst, MRB Analyst. So go follow him over on X. Again, track handicapper for Horseshoe, does a fantastic job over there. Look at that, guys. Woo! Kyle wins. That's what I'm talking about, baby. We'll definitely end the show on that. Pat, what's up?
And Kyle, just wanted to say, have a fun weekend up there, and we're going to look forward to the coverage. I think it's awesome that we get to cover this card, and then you're going to be the one reporting for us on Saturday.
I get to be the Howard running around and doing, of course, our first episode of Weekend Warriors is this Saturday. So please tune into that as we have live racing coming up from Monmouth and Woodbine. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic show on Saturday as well. It starts at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But for my co-hosts, Patrick Kunsel and Charlie Freeman, this has been your host, Kyle Roscoe, in episode 137 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast, covering the all-stakes Indiana Derby Pick5 at Horseshoe Indianapolis for Saturday, July 5th. And until next time, everybody, crush those bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good night.